Last week we talked about what it meant to follow Jesus, which is not as simple as you'd think it would be. It's actually more simple. And one of the things we looked at, though, that didn't seem so simple was the fishermen. Peter, James, John, Andrew. They had their boats, and Jesus said, "Come follow me," and they just left their boats and followed. And as we looked at that, I heard someone remark, "That's a little aggressive. Why don't you think through that? I mean, that seems impulsive. That seems reckless, and not in a good way." When I was a younger dad, I wanted my boys to know what it looked like to be a man. I wanted them to learn certain skills that I didn't quite know, and I didn't want them to be shortchanged. For example, I never grew up fishing. So I wanted them to learn how to fish, like really know how to fish, sail, which maybe isn't standard, but hey, we live near the ocean. How to shoot a gun. All of these things that I thought, these are the kind of things you need to learn how to do. Change oil, change a tire. And in this club we started, it was called the Dangerous Boys Club, because we wanted to teach them how to really, well, it just sounds cool to be dangerous, but that's what we wanted them to be. We didn't want them to be safe, and we wanted them to learn these particular skills. And I remember we would say this every time. There's a difference between being dangerous and being dumb. And that was really clear when we were talking about jumping off rocks into the ocean or into a lake. Once you get above 6 feet, and usually when you're jumping off a rock, you're 20 feet or up, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. You don't just impulsively jump. You need to go and look under the surface and look at what you're jumping into. And when we look at this series, as we look at especially what it means to follow, which by the way is much different than being a Christian. The word Christian has just been demolished. It's fairly useless now. And I, like many others, don't even want to associate with what comes with that word. But to follow, that's what Jesus called us to. Jesus called people to follow him. But when he called us, it's rarely going to be impulsive. It's rarely going to not be thought through. That's never been the expectation. In fact, what I want us to do is I want us to look at the difference between the way Matthew describes it and the way Luke describes it. Matthew describes it suddenly, but he's trying to communicate something else. He's not trying to give us the texture that Luke is going to give us. He says that Jesus just shows up and says, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." He sees them on the beach. He comes up to Peter and Andrew and says, "Come follow me." And he just says, "Oh, we left the boats." And then he goes on to James and John and their dad Zebedee, and they're in the boat, and he goes to them. And he says, "Come on, follow me." It says they just leave. Not only do they leave the boats on the beach, they leave their dad on the beach. How's that for a nice Father's Day? "Hey, Pops, we're just going to drop the family business. I know, it's going to be a little crazy for you, but hey, he's saying follow. We're just jumping in. It sounds like a cool thing to do." You would never do that unless you were in a weird place in life. In fact, right now, with the virus and the pandemic and everything that's happening, we're seeing people making rash decisions. Usually that means it's not a good decision. But in the context here, they're not going through that. And Matthew is not trying to say they're not thinking it through. He just has a different agenda of what he's trying to communicate. He's trying to communicate that Jesus' call to us is to come and to follow, and he's given examples. But Luke, on the other hand, gives us the texture. He gives us the context. And in fact, what's happening the night before is that the boys, that's probably how I'll refer to them, Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, it seems like they were partners in a group business. And they're out fishing at night because everybody knows you fish at night. That's when you catch the fish. And so they're out at night fishing. They come in You know what it's like pulling an all-nighter. You're exhausted. So they pull the boats up. They drag all the coolers. They pull all the food out. Everything's soaked. And they go over to just start cleaning the nets because they're not done yet. Just because you went fishing doesn't mean the job is done. And then Jesus is on the beach and he's teaching. And all these people are gathering around Jesus, so much so that he doesn't have enough space. And so he looks over and he says, hey, can I use your boat? And that's the first step that we see the disciples, who are really now just fishermen, the first step in following. They just loan him the boat. Easy, right? Sure, go ahead. And then they just continue to clean their nets. And so the second process, because that's what this is about following Jesus, it's a process. The second process we see here that Luke shares is that they are listening and learning. But they're not in the front row. In fact, it says that they're off cleaning their nets. It's like if you're listening to a podcast with headphones while you're washing your car. I mean, I'm engaged, but I'm not really engaged, but I'm kind of listening in. It's not like, ooh, let's drop everything and let's listen in. They're normal. These guys are normal like us. And so he goes, Jesus, and speaks and communicates and shares this good news. And they're kind of listening in. But then it gets to a more uncomfortable step. After speaking for a while, Jesus says to Peter, or Simon at this point, go out into deeper water, drop your nets, and let's see what you're going to catch. Now, they've been fishing all night because this is their profession. They know what they're doing. This is their family business. And here the carpenter, the religious rabbi, comes over and says, hey, I got a great idea. Talk about being in an awkward position. They're going to have to tell him no, right? This is uncomfortable. It's unreasonable. And in fact, they're surrounded with a bunch of people they all know as well. They're not professional fishermen. But they know you don't go fishing right now at noon with the sun beating down. The fish are kicking it. They're not going to... What are you thinking? And so as Jesus is asking their question, they're probably all thinking, awkward. And they look over to see how Peter and the boys are going to respond. And Peter says, well, you know, we've been fishing all night, which is kind of a way to say, you know, this is dumb, right? We haven't even caught a minnow. But all right, if you say so, we'll do it. That's another step. It's another part of the process of following Jesus. When you hear that unreasonable request, when you hear that thing that's a little bit awkward for you, but you know it's his voice. And because it's him, you make the decision to do it. So they did. And they go out onto the Sea of Galilee and they fish. And they catch so much that Peter is in awe because he realizes this is not about fish anymore. And he looks at Jesus and he says, get away from me, Lord. Not divine Lord, more like master. That's what it means. And so he says, get away from me, boss, master. I'm a mess. I'm a mess maker. Because that's what it feels like when you see God show up. When you see his presence. You don't quite fully understand it, but you know that something special is happening here. Now, Jesus has not yet heard Peter say, you are the Messiah. He's not there yet. He's not ready. It's still a process. But he takes that step, that unreasonable step, that scary step. A little jump, but it's a jump. But there's one more thing that happens. One more part of the process. Because after they pull in all of the fish, this incredible haul, And after Simon or Peter says, you shouldn't be around me, Jesus says, don't be afraid. Because that's what happens when you see God moving. When you recognize who you are and who he is, then fear will come in. But he says, there's no need to be fearful. From now on, I'll ask you to bring me people instead of fish. And then they pulled their boats onto the shore and they left everything to follow him. Now, even that, you're like, well, that's still a little sudden. This has been a process. We know that even earlier in the narratives of Jesus, we know that he called Peter way before this. Peter wasn't ready. He said, I saw you under the tree, to one of the guys. And so they gathered. So this is not like when they met him. They've been listening for a while. They've been loaning things probably for a while. They've probably taken a few other unreasonable requests from Jesus. But something happens. This is the point in their lives where they decide, we're going to follow you. But it says that they left the boats on the beach. Even then, they didn't just go, whoever wants it, and walk away. Because we know that later, after Peter has denied Jesus, that he doesn't know what to do. He's kind of ripped up, so he goes back to what he knows how to do. He goes fishing. Why are you going to go fishing unless you have a boat? You have nets. It's kind of like with my oldest. He's looking at colleges, and he has this passion of what he wants to do for a major. And it's one of those jobs that are hard to get, and one of those jobs where you're thinking, are you going to make it with this job? And so as a dad, you're like, go for it. Of course, be dangerous. Do that. But maybe have a backup plan. It's dumb to not have a backup plan. And so they don't just sell it. They're not being foolish. He keeps the boat. He keeps the nets because maybe they're going to be needed. And he's not thinking I'm going to need it for when I walk away. But there's still resources that need to be used. So as we look at these fishermen, they're not really being impulsive. They're making reasonable, thought-through decisions as they go through. And so as we look at our lives, we have to ask this main question that we're wrestling with during this series. Am I following? And we can look at it in the same context as this little moment that these fishermen go through. We can start our journey. Maybe it's by loaning in the boat. We have all these resources. Maybe it's someone in ministry, or it's something that you know that matters to God, that is loving another person, and it may be inconvenient, but it's really not that big of a sacrifice. Handing it over. I think of locally here where we can go and we can pack meals, or we can deliver food to those in need. It takes a couple hours. It's really not that big of a step. The other thing we can do is we can listen and learn, and we can even do it at a distance and not feel guilty about it. So much of this is guilt and shame, like we're not doing enough. But we look at these fishermen, they made decisions that we would probably make. I mean, right now, you're listening to this message at a distance. I've had so many people come and talk to me and say, I stopped going to church. I stopped being a part of the Christian community. I just stopped walking and following. But now, because I can do it at a distance, I'm starting to listen. Maybe that's where you're at. It could be that you've started to move to this place where you know that God is calling you into something that's uncomfortable, that may even seem unreasonable, that the people around you are going to think, ooh, why are you doing that? But yet you know it's God that's calling you to it. How do you know it's God's voice? Because you know that that's not something you would say. Well, how do I know the difference between God speaking and me? Well, the way I've been able to tell it in my life is because I hear that voice, I hear that nudge, and I realize that's not me. I would have never said something that crazy. Or that's so uncomfortable. Why would I have that voice be mine? And yet, when we make those steps, you're never going to look back with regret. You're never going to look back and go, I really shouldn't have let God push me into that uncomfortable, unreasonable situation. Who cares what my friends or family or coworkers thought? Like, because of that moment, something new happened in me and in someone else's life. And then we all reach that point in this journey where we know we're holding something back. Maybe it is your career. Maybe it is your identity. These were fishermen. That's how they were known. Oh, the fishermen. And so they take their boats and they leave them on the shore and they leave their nets there, which means they're changing. They're going to put their efforts in a different direction. They're going to now say, okay, we're going to follow you. I have no idea what you mean by fishers of men, but I've seen enough now that I'm going to go a little farther and I'm going to leave things that I was holding on to. That's what it looks like. And imagine Peter, James, Andrew, John, looking back at this moment and saying to themselves, all gathered around a campfire, talking, hey, remember when he asked us to go back out and fish? What if we hadn't done that? Or remember when he asked, could he talk in the boat? Who does that? Who uses a floating podium? What if we hadn't have done that? Our lives would be completely different. And it's reasonable for us to ask the same question. Am I following? Am I missing out on something? Or the more important question, look what I can participate in. Do I want to miss out on that because I choose not to follow? That's the question. That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. We each wake up in one way or another in the morning asking, am I following? Not how well am I doing? Am I doing better than somebody else? This is not a game. Take the guilt, the shame, the scoreboard out of it, and just take one step at a time. One reasonable, thought-through step at a time. That doesn't mean to be dumb, but it does mean to be dangerous. And I want you to know what you're getting yourself into. I want you to know what's underneath the surface. It won't be safe, but it'll be full of life.